Bro, listen.
Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Getting on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
All right, there's no human being I'd rather have on this right now than Alex Anthopoulos. That's a fact. It's a fact. There we go.
You like the same chips.
So we're moving on from the chips. We've already defined, and thank you for all that you have done, and all you continue to do. But at the early stages of the baseballs and boring movement, you really moved the conversation about ketchup flavored potato chips. And we landed, and without getting into it, we landed at really the consensus that you're the only one who likes them. So
let's have Rob Thompson on, another Canadian. I'd say I challenge you to find a Canadian that's not a fan.
All right.
You might be the only other Canadian.
You know what?
Yeah, manager, right?
You know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to a player though. I'm going to go to
Soroka. You got.
I'm going to go to Tyler O'Neill.
There you go. Good
later
call.
This week.
Good call. Local. There you go.
In fairness,
let me tell you something. The way he looks, I already know the answer.
Yeah, because
he's putting anything like that into his body.
I was just going to say that. Say that.
That's actually a setup.
Do you have Matt Stairs' phone number?
I didn't say that.
No,
Lucky Matt.
It's good. All right. Honestly, it's great to see you. Great to hear from you. So we're just a little bit into the season, so we don't want to make broad, sweeping judgments and statements, but we can reflect on things and dive into things. And one of the things I wanted to dive into was the Chris Sale trade. I didn't get a chance to see. I swung by the camp a couple times. I sat down with Chris for a little bit, for about 20 or so minutes. And one of the things that jumped out to me, Alex, because I've obviously talked to Chris a lot, but he said this is the first time he was healthy coming out of a season, going into an off season, going into spring training, and coming out of spring training since 2017. And I'm like, there we go. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's important. There's no doubt about it. I mean, just since I've been in Atlanta, just experiences that struck me were Charlie Morton going into an offseason and he wasn't completely healthy and at the rehab and so on. Didn't get off to the best start. Those seasons that he was healthy and had a regular normal offseason, he was better, and he was where he should be. And even Kirby Yates was off to an awesome start and tremendous teammate and guy. When we just gotten him, he wasn't completely healthy going into his first offseason with us. And, now he's been better. So I'm not ready to, make determinations to say, well, those guys are older. And if you're older, and that can happen with a young player. But I do feel like that definitely shaped some of the optimism beyond the fact that our medical staff felt good. And then what we knew about the person, the makeup, the work ethic, all that kind of stuff. But look, knowing that he ended the year healthy, had performed well, was going to finally have a normal off season for the first time in a long time, wasn't trying to get caught up, we were cautiously optimistic.
All right. So because people like this, and take me behind the scenes, take me behind when it came up, when the idea of Chris Sale came up, how that sort of gained some traction. I was on a zip line over Honduras when you announced it. So, yeah.
That's
you know what's good about that, Alex, honestly?
Were you on your phone soaring through the air?
No. So that's what I was going to say.
I don't think there's PAs or something in Honduras.
No,
in the middle of a zip line.
That's what I was going to say. In this world, in this awful world that we have to live in sometimes of nonstop news cycle, which was worse this offseason, I was blissfully strapped into a zip line where I couldn't physically tweet or do anything. So thank you for that.
At least you were able to connect. You were able to get online.
I what?
Because we completed it New Year's Eve. or the 30th or right.
Yeah, it was
right?
between Christmas. It was between Christmas and New
Yeah, it
Year's.
was right there. It was close. I remember I was in Toronto and with at my wife's on my wife's side of the family staying at my in-laws' house. So I just remember at that period of time it was during the holidays. So right into going into New Year's Eve and and so on. And then Georgia Bulldogs and all that kind of stuff. So
All right, so take me back to when this idea first was hatched.
look, we had checked in with the Red Sox on and off, even the 22 off season going into 23. We had touched base with them. It didn't go anywhere, but we had inquired. You know, we've always admired. I mean, I think anybody in the league admires Chris and his career and the person and the ability, and one of the best starters in the game for a long time in his career. So we had checked in previous off season. Obviously, that didn't go anywhere. Checked in again last summer, 23. That obviously didn't go anywhere as well. And checked back in the off season, and just kind of stayed in touch. And as we both know, the off season's long, and all kinds of changes happen with trades and so on. And we just kind of stayed in communication, and it really came together, right at the end there before the new year.
So obviously, you have interest in the player. So this is what my takeaway. You have interest in the player. The timing isn't right. And I assume when you said summer, that's probably the deadline, right?
Trade deadline. Yeah, we had checked in, but the Red Sox, I don't think, moved anybody, right? So
they did not.
We had checked in on guys like Adam Duvall and obviously Sale and so
on. So when you get into the offseason and you have these free agents, it seems like you want a starting pitcher, right?
Yes.
Right.
Definitely.
Okay. You knew that you wanted a starting pitcher. So there's free agents, there's trades. You guys were linked to Cease a lot or whatever, for better or for worse.
Sure. Yeah, no, we inquired on look, it's fair to say we inquired on all the guys that were either traded or were talked about being traded. I mean, you're not doing your job if you're not checking in. So there was a lot of starters available, both in free agency and trade. And every team that was looking for starters, I don't speak for them, but I'm assuming that everyone would check in. You're not doing your job if you have a need. Just like if you need a third baseman or second baseman, you're going to do the work and check in and get a sense on price and so on.
So to me, it's congratulations. You don't need to hear this from me, but I said at the time, I thought Chris was a really good fit for you guys. And for all the reasons that I articulated before, I thought he was going to have a bounce back. So when you looked at him and you continue to look at him, did you feel the same way? Not in performance and mentality, because it's, he's an alpha, right? I mean, he's an alpha. So
yeah, I had mentioned this to him in spring training. Sometimes with the alphas, you get the good and the bad, right? You get the alpha, great competitor, work ethic, all that stuff. But then you get kind of maybe not the most pleasant person to be around, And I think he's special where he's tremendous. Before the game, I mean, if he's not pitching that day, in between the starts, it's awesome. Great person, great teammate, great example for the young guys, very accountable. He's beloved. I mean, he was beloved in our clubhouse so quickly, and we'd already heard that. We'd done a ton of work on him. And then once game day hits and he's out there on the mound, he's as tenacious and, as competitive as anybody you want. And guys love playing behind him. So he leads by example in every way, right? On the field, in the clubhouse, off the field, the way he goes about it. So he's been everything that we could have expected there. But look, I think everyone agreed, when he's out there, he's good. The question was health. And the other piece to this is, yes, we had interest, but once we got access to look at his file and get a sense and have our trainers and doctors review it. And you can never guarantee health, obviously. And we're, year one, and early in year one, but so far he's gotten off to a phenomenal start for us. But really, that was a good deal for both teams. I mean, it made a ton of sense for both clubs. I've said this many times. I think Vaughn's going to be an all-star caliber player. The makeup, I think he's the type of guy that can be a core player, because the makeup, the person, you can't help but smile when you bring up his name or he walks in that clubhouse, and he could flat hit. I mean, there's no doubt about that as well. So, I mean, you start looking at, and again, I won't speak for the Red Sox, but you start looking at what they're building now with that young position player group. You start going around the horn and so on. It's pretty exciting, and, look, obviously we had to give to get, and they weren't looking to move Chris Sale. They weren't shopping. We're the ones that approached them. It had always been us. initiating the conversation and trying to engage them. So I think it worked out for both clubs. Obviously we'll find out over time, but I think it made sense. That's why it finally came together.
Well, last thing was, would it be fair to say that the fit with Grissom in this trade was, of all the times that you approached him, this was the best fit? I'm not phrasing that right?
Well, in terms of like for us, you mean
different? Well, it's a different regime, right? Let's be honest. I mean, you dealing with a different front office than you were.
Yeah, but I can tell you that look, Vaughn Grissom a year ago came in competing for the shortstop job with us, right? Spring training 23. So things had changed. Now, it didn't change our outlook on him in terms of great person, great teammate, phenomenal offensive player with bat to ball skills. But ultimately, Orlando Arcia won that job, and we gave him an extension. Was an all-star last year. He won that job, and he became the starting shortstop for us for now and going forward. So he was blocked there. We had Ozzie Albies under control for 4 years. He's going to be blocked at second base. The only area that we would have had competition was in left field. And look, could Vaughn have done it? He's athletic enough. Certainly, he came to us at the end of the year and said, I'll move any position, go anywhere just to make myself more viable, more of an option. Chipper Jones went to the outfield years ago. Austin Riley did it early for us when we had Josh Donaldson having a great year. So it was doable. We were prepared to do that. But at the end of the day, his value is on the dirt. It's on the infield, right? And at least, for the next 3-4 years, there wasn't gonna be a path for us, barring someone else getting traded or having some type of injury. So I think this ultimately worked out really well for his career.
When did you realize you wanted to extend Chris?
So obviously it came together. We got him, and then we're talking about it a few days after. And the more we talked about it was, part of the value was having the club option for the following year. We knew it wasn't a one and done. Those were some of the challenges with some of the other guys that were out there in terms of trade, right? 1 year of control. And that was tough to give up assets and so on. And so we knew we had 2 years of control with Chris. But I think, the more we thought about it after we made the deal, we just started talking about how important we felt he was going to be in the clubhouse. How we wanted him to be a core guy, set an example for the young guys. We have a lot of young talent on the mound, a lot of young arms. And to take away the uncertainty of our thought with that trade was we really valued that club option. And of course, it was our option. We could have waited and so on. But we felt like, for what we wanted out of Chris, and he didn't ask for it or anything like that at all, didn't expect it. We just felt like the right thing was for him to know he was going to be here. He wasn't trying to pitch for his option or his contract. In return for that, we'd ultimately get an option for year 3. Granted, he's older at that time. But it felt like for all the reasons we wanted Chris for what he could do on the field. But a big part of the appeal was who he was as a person and the example he could set, because our strength in the minor leagues is on the mound. And knowing that we're going to have guys that are going to come up and so on, and having him be an example, not that we're asking him to be anything more than he is. Same thing with Charlie Morton, but those 2 guys in our clubhouse, as real foundational pieces for all the young starters. I think, it's hard to quantify, but I think in the long run, the young starters, their careers will be impacted and enhanced, in my opinion, by having those guys around. So I think the more we talked about it, we just said, hey, let's do this. Yes, we don't need to do this, but let's do it. The trade-off is he's got stability. He knows he's going to be here, and we have access to a 3rd year, if things, go well and so on.
Well, you don't need to hear this from me, but again, congratulations. Because I love that. I love that, like, the having people for young players to get behind Alex. Like, I've seen it a million times, man. Like, it's especially for starting pitchers. It's like, this is how you do things. Like, this is the first person, and this will scratch right where you itched, Roy Halladay, right?
Yep.
The first person I heard this about was Roy Halladay.
Yep. And look, and I'll tell you, Pat Hankin talked about it a lot when I was in Toronto. The impact that the veterans had on him, how important, he won a Cy Young ultimately. And I'm not saying that's why he won a Cy Young, but Pat Hankin to this day might be one of the best teammates, people you've ever been around. That's obviously a reflection of him as a person, how he's been raised and so on. But there's no doubt the example that he was shown and the example that was set for him absolutely helped. Roy Halladay talked about what Pat Hankin meant to him and the impact, and they carried it on. And I could tell you, Cole Hamels, it was a 1-year deal for us, and it was during pandemic and so on, and he got hurt. But Max Fried and even Luke Jackson, who's on the Giants now, would both tell you the impact that he had on them. and the way they went about it. So look, at the end of the day, you still need to perform, and that's 90% of this. But I think that other piece, when you can find players that can impact other players, and again, it's very difficult to quantify. I think it's a real thing, small thing, but Jose Batista's breakout. Big part of it was Vernon Wells having a conversation with him. Dwayne Murphy and Cito Gaston, they were on him all year about getting ready on time and so on. But just like everything else, you might take math at school and 4 different people are trying to teach the same thing. The way one person says it, conveys it, explains it to you, that might be the one that lands, even though the other 3 have been telling you the same thing. Vernon one night, Jose will tell the story, he's told it before, that Vernon one night just kind of expressed to him how he should be getting ready early and basically go embarrass yourself and so on. And that was the night it kind of just all of a sudden, he was so irritated, frustrated it wasn't working, and it clicked. It doesn't mean it wouldn't have eventually, but I'm a big believer that teammates can make other teammates better. Again, how to quantify it is hard, but Chris Sale's phenomenal for what he does on the mound. But that other piece with all these assets we have on the mound, and that's why Charlie Morton, beyond what he does, I think it's very important for us.
All right, last thing is there's a trade made, and I always scramble to, every time an early season trade is made, I scramble to find examples. I remember I was in Toronto when Red Sox made a trade in May 2003, Byung-Hyun Kim for Shea Hillenbrand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But Alex, like that was like May 20 something. This Arise thing is, I mean, you don't have a magnitude. Can you remember of anything like this? Like a magnitude of this trade in the first week of May?
I understand where you're going with this, and normally I would say I agree with you. The only thing is there was a lot of talk, through media reports, and again, I was not privy to, we weren't looking at second base or first base or but just reading stuff in spring training, that there was a lot of reports that San Diego and Miami had been talking, whether that's true or not, but ultimately they made a deal, right? So you'd have to ask AJ Preller and Peter Bendix, but it sounded like that had been an ongoing conversation and they had been engaged and been talking, because I know a lot of reports came out. So I wasn't shocked ultimately that that's the deal that they lined up on. Look, there's some trades that happen in spring, at the end of spring. I mean, Dylan Cease got moved, which the same thing, right?
That's true.
But there was a lot
but the same guy. So.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The only thing I guess I'd say is there was a lot of discussion about Cease in the winter and media reports and so on, and that was carrying through to spring training, so on. If no one had speculated about Arise getting traded and Arise and the Marlins talking to San Diego, I probably would have been a little more surprised. And you're right, it normally doesn't happen, but I think when deals happen early, they're likely a result of conversations that have been ongoing for a while.
Have you made a deal? What was the earliest deal you've made in a season?
I'm trying to think. The only one that came to mind was we made a deal with the Mariners, and it really a DFA prompted it. We DFA'd left-handed reliever Jesse Biddle, and we had been talking to the Mariners prior to that about Anthony Swarzak. So not a huge deal, another reliever, but we had been talking to them about him. I think, they were in a rebuilding year and so on. He was in the last year of his deal. They had made the Cano trade with the Mets, and there was a lot of money being exchanged, and Swarzak's contract had gone back. So ultimately, when Biddle was DFA'd, they had interest in him. That sparked conversations again. We added salary at that time. But God, top of my head, I think that was in May. Maybe the end of May, I'd have to go look, but that was early, right? That felt like an early deal. That normally doesn't happen. 99% of the time, you're waiting until the All-Star break, or maybe just before the All-Star break. The only other deal I remember making early was at the All-Star break, Yunel Escobar, when he was in Atlanta, coincidentally, and I was in Toronto. We did that, I think, on the Monday, Tuesday of the All-Star break. So, apart from that, the majority of deals are coming out of the All-Star break or so on in 21. But this was by design. We added Jock Peterson and Stephen Vogt in back-to-back days coming out of the All-Star break. But that was by design, that we wanted to come out of the break, having made some deals to show our clubhouse that, there was speculation we were going to tear it down and sell and so on. And other than me going out and doing podcasts like this or sitting and doing scrums, and no one was going to believe me, right? The words were going to ring hollow. So, the only way to really indicate that we're not selling was to go out and make some deals. So we took that period. It was 3-4 days, and we got Jock on the Friday, and then we got Stephen Vogt the following day. And that was more to keep injecting life into the clubhouse, because we were underperforming, had a lot of injuries and so on. And ultimately, the meat of the deals were done July 30th or the last day, 31st.
Yeah, man, I love that. It's for another time, but I love the setting the message thing. I mean, that's what, this is too. This is, AJ's sending a message. It's an early message,
I think
right?
it's important. I think, for us in 21, when we got Peterson and Vogt, we had lost Acuna on the Saturday. We're going into the All-Star break on Monday. We're playing in Miami. Acuna season-ending injury on Saturday. The next day, Ian Anderson hurts his shoulder, and he had been our number 2 starter the year prior in the postseason when we went to Game 7. So you lose those guys back-to-back days, and we're under 500 by a few games. Our run differential was still okay, and the division was still open. But I had already gotten a sense of people were talking about, are we, Charlie Morton is on a 1-year deal. Is Morton going to get traded? Is Will Smith going to get traded? It had just started. And I remember telling our staff, I knew by the time, we had the 4 days off, people had that dead period to speculate. The momentum would just build. And once we would get back on that Friday, that first game, guaranteed, and which would have been fair, hey, you guys just lost 2 of your best players, 1 for the season. Darno was out as well. And Freddie Freeman's in the last year of his deal. So we have just a lot of things. There are a lot of free agents and so on, that guys were going to have microphones in their face. Hey, do you think you're going to sell? Do you think you're going to sell? And that's normal. We're 2 weeks leading up to the trade deadline. So other than me trying to play defense and telling everybody, no, we're looking to add, people say, yeah, sure. GM speak. It was important. I remember telling Jed Hoyer that I need to get a deal done by Friday, and hopefully it's Jock. I knew what Jock could bring to the table in terms of energy, clubhouse, and so on. So he was definitely a guy that we targeted. Now, Jed had announced prior to that point, hey, we're looking to sell, I think a week before the trade deadline, we're going to sell. So he was open to making a deal. And then with the Diamondbacks, I think they had excess catchers at the time. Stephen Vogt was ultimately going to get squeezed out. And, same thing with him, clubhouse, the energy. We had a down and out clubhouse, right? We just had a lot of things go wrong. And those guys, the energy they bring, I didn't know Vogt, but I'd heard unbelievable things. It made a whole lot of sense. And I remember telling both guys, beyond what you bring on the field, the energy and that you bring is going to be critically important for us. So I think that was the only way to do it. And I think it kind of killed any thought of rumors or guys wondering, am I leaving? Am I not going to be here? And it signaled to the clubhouse. I think it's important. I think, players are doing everything they can. I think at some point, whether they say it or not, they look to the front office to do something, right? And if they put you in a position to contend, it's on, they're throwing the ball back to you that, you need to hold up your end of the bargain and come through.
You get me fired up. The trade deadline's
Get in a 3-point stance. Go.
No, it's basketball. I'm a triple threat. All right. Most important time. Here we go. Wasabi cloud storage, hot or not? The statement that teleportation is hotter than invisibility. Alex Anthopoulos, what do you say?
Hot. I don't want, invisible feels like you're sneaking around, you're being deceitful and seeing things you shouldn't be seeing probably, right? So the teleportation is just a convenience, right? Of not having to travel, this, that, be anywhere at any time. Time is finite, obviously. And, every day we're losing minutes and hours. So the fact that you can cut down a lot of that, it's an easy hot for me.
I think so too. And the first thing that jumped to mind in this question was how awful travel has become. So there you go.
Yep, it's fair. Very, very fair.
All right. As always, thank you.
Okay, Rob, appreciate it.